Wicked proved me wrong, kind of. So I saw Wicked Part 1, and in many ways I was pleasantly surprised, and in other ways, expectations were met in a less pleasant way. I'll just get the negative right out of the way so we can get to all the positive. My main criticism is the same one I had from the very first trailer. The majority of the cinematography and lighting looks like poop, particularly in the daytime scenes, which were shockingly overexposed. I have never seen so many clipped highlights in a film of this size in my life. The backlight was so harsh, and the foreground was mostly flat and washed out, which is a shame considering this is a companion piece to the definitive Technicolor classic, The Wizard of Oz, and this would have been the perfect opportunity to interpret that general aesthetic through a contemporary lens. Being shot digitally instead of on film gave the movie a very sterile, artificial look that did a disservice to some of the practical sets, making them look like CGI. Though thankfully this isn't always the case, and many of them do end up looking tangible. And not all the scenes look horrible. Indoor night scenes look the best, and the finale also looks pretty great. So yeah, I hope the color grading team does what they can for part 2 to make it look more appealing, but I wouldn't hold my breath because they didn't do it for this film despite the immediate discourse about the visuals from the very first trailer. And mind you, I watched this film in IMAX, so the colors, contrast, and overall look was more rich than the standard digital projection, and it still didn't look great. The dancing through life sequence was actually shocking in terms of how badly it was lit and color graded. Okay, I could go on, but my next negative point is not a huge deal, but it's actually my only other notable complaint, so yeah. It's that the beginning of the second act was a little sluggish, and the runtime could have been cut down a tiny bit. I still think the film earns being well over 2 hours, but there's a patch where things could be tightened. After that, I don't really have anything else negative to say. The film worked so much better than I thought it would. John M. Chu is not the most skilled director in the world, but here he's really operating at the top of his game and strengthening his toolset. He pulled it off. He just needs to find a new cinematographer and a new gaffer. I was particularly impressed with how well he handled the tone. This could have been a tonal disaster and also quite cheesy, but he managed to keep all the campiness and silly comedic elements from the stage production and translate them into a whimsical spectacle that had dramatic weight. It fully embraced being a musical, not holding back at all, but finding a way to make that feel natural and accessible, instead of awkward and obligatory. Rob Marshall could learn a thing or two from John M. Chu on how to direct a movie musical. Hell, John M. Chu should have been the one to direct The Little Mermaid instead. With a new cinematographer, of course. Anyway, this film is not afraid of fantasy or whimsy, and it leans into it without being garish or over the top. It's emotionally grounded in a way that you can invest in, and I initially thought the idea of splitting the musical into 2 films was unnecessary, but it surprisingly was definitely the way to go. Despite those previously mentioned sluggish bits, I can't imagine condensing everything here into a single hour to make room for the rest of the story. And it does feel like its own complete film, especially with the electrifying final 15 minutes. I can't imagine more story immediately after that. That's how the movie was supposed to end. The cast is solid across the board, though I could see other actors doing a more impressionable job in supporting roles like Fiyero and the Wizard. Not to say they were bad, nothing particularly unique or groundbreaking. And I was never worried about Cynthia Erivo because I already knew what she was capable of, and I wasn't worried vocally about Ariana Grande because I obviously know what she's capable of singing-wise. I was very curious of how she would be acting-wise, considering she's never been in anything that requires a cinematic performance, and she ended up being the highlight of the movie for me. She absolutely lit up the screen and brought something unique I don't think any other actress could have brought. Glinda is a very campy, over-the-top, exaggerated character, and Ariana manages to embrace that essence in a way that's still grounded and nuanced. Her performance is part old Hollywood starlet, part Lucille Ball, part OG Glinda Kristen Chenoweth, and part her own interpretation of the character. Sometimes the Nickelodeon jumped out ever so slightly, but this is the type of role where that's perfectly fine in moderation. I'm not 100% confident she could as successfully play a character that isn't whimsical, but I'd be curious to see what else she has up her sleeve in another potential movie role as Glinda. She kills it. She really does. This is the perfect role for her. And yeah, this movie, you can tell there's a lot of passion put into it on all fronts. It's just the visual aspect is a very, very glaring flaw that doesn't hold the movie back to a significant degree. Yeah, I think the movie itself transcends the flawed visuals. At this point, I'm just rambling. Yes, I thought the movie was very good and surpassed my expectations, and luckily the ugly aspects did not outweigh the general beauty of the film. So, I don't know what else to say. Wicked, yeah, what did you think? Let me know. Bye.